The Wyoming Territory, 1878. The storm rolled in like a pack of wolves, howling across the ridges and cutting through the barren land. The sky was a black quilt stitched with lightning, each flash revealing the desolation below. On the long trail, cutting through Red Rock Canyon, a lone rider pressed on, his oilskin coat soaked through, his hat dripping streams of rain that clung to the edges of his beard. Caleb Harlow had lived through worse storms. He'd weathered blizzards that buried cattle alive, droughts that cracked the earth, and nights when loneliness screamed louder than coyotes. But grief was the storm that never left. His wife, buried on the hill behind his cabin. His little girl, taken by fever 2 winters back. Every mile he rode since then had been heavy. Through the thunder, a sound cut the night, thin, broken, desperate. A cry. Caleb slowed his horse, boots tightening in the stirrups. He thought it the wind at first, but the cry came again, carried weakly from the rocks near the canyon wall. Dismounting, lantern in hand, he followed, and there, beneath the jagged outcrop, he found her, a young woman half-conscious, her body wrapped in a torn cloth tied desperately across her chest. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Please don't take it off." The rancher's dilemma. Caleb stood over her, the lantern's glow flickering across her pale, dirt-smeared face. Rain pattered against her skin, mingling with streaks of blood. She clutched the cloth like it was her last defense against the world. He cursed under his breath. He had little food back at the cabin, just enough beans and salted pork to keep one man alive through winter. He didn't have room for another burden, especially not a stranger whose troubles might drag death right to his doorstep. But then she looked at him, eyes wide and glassy, filled with terror and something else, pleading, as if she saw in him the last thread of hope she dared to grasp. For a heartbeat, he saw his daughter's face, the same fragile fear, the same silent prayer for protection. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Damn it," he muttered. He knelt, slid his arms beneath her frail frame, and lifted her onto his horse. She was lighter than he expected, bones beneath soaked cloth. Swinging up into the saddle, he pressed her against him and nudged the horse toward the trail north. The storm howled louder, and then he heard them. Howls. Real ones. Wolves. Shadows flitted across the ridge, eyes glinting in the lightning. Caleb drew his rifle one-handed, the girl clinging weakly to his coat. A snarl. A leap. Caleb fired, the crack shattering the storm. A wolf tumbled into the mud, but more gave chase, teeth flashing. "Come on." Caleb spurred his horse. Muzzle flashes lit the dark as he fired again, driving them back. Rain mixed with the stench of powder. By the time his cabin lights flickered in the distance, the pack had faded into the storm. Cabin shelter. The cabin loomed on the ridge, its timbers groaning in the wind. Caleb dismounted, carrying the girl inside, boots squelching on the wooden floor. He set her carefully on the cot by the fire, the room's warmth chasing the cold from her skin. The place was bare, just a table, a chair, shelves lined with tin plates and worn tools. A home built for one man and haunted by memories of 3. Caleb lit the fire higher, pulled a clean rag from a trunk, and dabbed at the gashes on her arms. She winced, clutching the cloth tighter around her body. "Easy," he muttered, her lips parted. A whisper, barely audible, above the crackle of flames. "Please don't take it off." The fear in her voice stopped him, not the ordinary fear of pain, but something deeper, something carved into the bone. Caleb leaned back. He could see the edges of scars beneath the torn cloth, faint lines etched like cruel handwriting across her skin. He wanted to know what had happened, who had left her like this. But for now, he respected her plea. He set aside the rag and poured her a tin cup of water. She drank slowly, trembling hands gripping it as if it were salvation. Caleb turned to the fire, shadows playing on the walls. It had been years since anyone else sat in this cabin. The silence was different now, no longer the emptiness of solitude, but the uneasy weight of another life suddenly dropped into his. He stared into the flames, remembering nights when his wife's laughter filled the room, when his daughter's small hands tugged at his coat. Those sounds had been buried with them. All that was left was the wind, the coyotes, and his own stubborn heartbeat. And yet tonight, a stranger sat across from him, her face pale but alive, her presence stirring something he had thought long dead. Mysterious signs. Morning broke, gray and bitter. Snow fell in thin veils across the land, blanketing the hills. Caleb stepped outside, pulling his coat tight. That's when he saw them. Hoof prints. Fresh. Circling near the treeline, fading into the drifts. Someone had been close during the night, watching. Caleb's grip tightened around the rifle he carried everywhere. He scanned the horizon, but the storm's remnants blurred everything in white silence. Back inside, he found her sitting up weakly, clutching the cloth still, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. "Tracks outside," Caleb said. "Who's looking for you?" Her lips trembled, but no words came. She only shook her head, eyes wide with terror. Caleb exhaled sharply. "You don't bring tracks like that without reason." She lowered her gaze, saying nothing. Hours passed. Caleb chopped wood outside, every creak of the axe echoing across the empty valley. But unease gnawed at him. The world was never this quiet unless something was near. As dusk settled, he set the table with 2 tin plates. She barely touched the beans he ladled out. The fire crackled. Silence pressed in. Then a sound. Hoofbeats. Slow. Purposeful. Drawing closer. Caleb froze. Shadows shifted outside the cabin window. The girl's breath hitched, her body curling tighter around the cloth. And then 3 thunderous knocks rattled the door. Caleb rose, rifle in hand, the firelight painting his face in shades of steel and shadow. The storm was gone, but something worse had found him. Bandits at the door, almost equals 400 words. The knocks shook the cabin door again, louder this time, the kind of knock that didn't ask permission. Caleb's rifle was already raised when a rough voice called through the wood. "Evenin', rancher. We ain't here for you. Just the girl." The fire popped in the hearth. Mira shrinking against the wall, clutching the cloth tighter. Her face went pale as death. Caleb's jaw set. "Don't know what you're talking about." A low chuckle rolled from outside. "Don't play dumb. She's ours. Best hand her over before this gets messy." Caleb glanced at Mira. She shook her head violently, lips forming silent words. "Please." His grip tightened on the rifle. "You'll get her over my dead body." For a beat, silence. Then gunfire erupted. Bullets splintered the cabin walls, glass shattering from the single window. Caleb dropped to the floor, pulling Mira with him. He fired back through the cracks, the rifle kicking against his shoulder. The night lit with flashes, smoke curling in the cold air. The bandits shouted, circling the cabin. Boots pounded in the snow, voices snarling threats. One bullet slammed through the door, grazing Caleb's arm. He gritted his teeth, firing again, the report booming. Minutes dragged like hours. Caleb's world shrank to smoke, blood, and the echo of gunfire. Finally, silence fell. The bandits' curses faded into the trees, retreating. The cabin was a ruin. Bullet holes pocked the walls, the window blown open to the snow. Mira trembled, her face buried in her knees. Caleb leaned his rifle against the wall, chest heaving. He knew what this meant. These men weren't finished. They'd be back, and in greater numbers. Keeping her meant war. And yet he looked at her, fragile, broken, but alive. Something in his chest, long buried, told him he couldn't let her go. Flight into the wilderness. By dawn, Caleb had packed what little he could carry dried beans, cartridges, a bedroll. Snow still fell as he saddled his horse, helping Mira mount, though she could barely keep upright. They rode hard into the mountains, leaving the cabin behind. Smoke from the chimney faded into the horizon. It had been his only home since the world took his family. Now it was gone, abandoned to wolves and bandits. The trail climbed into higher country, where snow lay deep and silence pressed heavy. Mira swayed in the saddle, her breaths shallow. Twice she slipped, nearly falling before Caleb caught her. "Hold on," he muttered, though she seemed barely able to hear. Inside, doubt gnawed at him. Why was he doing this? Why risk his life, his land, everything, for a stranger whose past invited bullets and blood? But then he looked at her, fragile, desperate, and something twisted in his chest. Leaving her would be like leaving his daughter to the fever that stole her. He hadn't saved his little girl, but maybe, just maybe, he could save this one. The ally appears. Snow thickened as they wound deeper into the mountains. By afternoon, the horse staggered, hooves crunching ice. Caleb led on foot, Mira leaning against him. That's when he saw him. A figure stood ahead, half shrouded by the falling snow. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in deerskin and furs. An obsidian knife glinted at his belt, and his dark eyes watched them in silence. Caleb froze, hand drifting to his rifle. "Don't come closer." The man didn't move, just watched. Calm, unreadable. Mira stirred, her eyes widening. "Tala," she whispered, relief and fear mingled in her voice. The stranger gave a small nod, stepping aside. With a gesture, he motioned toward the canyon wall, where a narrow opening yawned, nearly invisible. A cave. Shelter. Caleb's rifle remained steady. "Why help us?" The man's face betrayed nothing, only silence. Then he turned and slipped into the cave's shadow, leaving the decision to them. Caleb's instincts screamed not to trust him, but the wind howled, Myra's body sagged, and the cold clawed at his bones. Grinding his teeth, Caleb guided her inside. The cave was dry, a fire already smoldering near the back. Tala had prepared it, as if expecting them. His motives were hidden like the shadows in his eyes. Bonding in hardship. That night, the three sat around the small fire, the flames painting their faces in orange light. Caleb kept his rifle close, though fatigue weighed his limbs. Mira, pale but stronger in the warmth, finally spoke. "My name is Mira." Her voice cracked, as though unused for days. Caleb only nodded. "Caleb." She hesitated, eyes dropping to the cloth she still clutched. "They took me, the men outside, said I belonged to them, said I carried something they wanted." She shook her head, tears brimming. "I escaped with only this." Her words trailed into silence. Caleb stared at the flames. "I lost everything once," he muttered. "Swore I'd never care again. And yet, here I am. Dragon, a stranger through a blizzard." He gave a humorless laugh. Mira looked at him, eyes softening. Tala, silent until now, shifted closer to the fire. His presence radiated quiet strength. He said little, but his gaze scanned the cave mouth, his knife never far from hand. Caleb couldn't decide if he was protector or prison guard. For the first time in years, Caleb felt the stirrings of something like trust, but it was brittle, fragile, and dangerous. Foreshadow of betrayal. Later, when Caleb stepped outside to gather snow for water, the night wrapped him in silence. Stars burned cold above, the mountains looming like watchmen. He paused before re-entering, hearing voices, low, hushed, echoing from within the cave. Myra's voice, broken with urgency. "You mustn't tell him, Tala. He must never know." Caleb's chest tightened. He pressed against the stone, listening. Tala's reply was too soft to catch, but Myra's words cut sharp. "If he finds out, he'll turn away like the others." Caleb stepped back, the snow crunching under his boots. His hands trembled as they brushed the rifle's stock. He had felt it since the moment he found her. The cloth was more than rags. It hid something terrible. When he returned inside, neither Mira nor Tala met his gaze. The fire burned low, shadows dancing against the cave walls. And outside, carried on the wind, came the chilling sound of men. Laughter, horse calls, wolves of a different breed. The bandits were back on their trail. The ambush. Dawn came gray and cold, the snow outside the cave glittering like shards of broken glass. Caleb had barely closed his eyes when Tala stiffened near the entrance, his hand tightening on his knife. Then came the sound, a horse's whicker, the crunch of boots, voices. They're in here. Bandits. Gunfire exploded a heartbeat later, bullets sparking off stone as the cave filled with acrid smoke. Caleb dove behind a boulder, Mira screaming as chips of rock rained down. Tala sprang forward with the precision of a wolf, his knife flashing, striking down the first man who dared enter. Caleb's rifle roared in the narrow space, the recoil jarring his shoulder. He saw one outlaw fall, another stumble back into the snow outside. But there were too many. Muzzle flashes lit the cave mouth, the stench of powder choking the air. A bullet tore across Caleb's side, hot blood soaking his coat. He staggered, gritting his teeth, refusing to drop. He fired again, each shot buying another second. "Mira, stay down!" he shouted, dragging her against the wall. The cave became a furnace of noise, gunshots, shouting, the clang of steel. Caleb's ears rang, his vision blurring from blood loss. But he fought on. Tala moved like a shadow, cutting down another intruder before slipping back into the dark. Still, the bandits pressed harder. Their leader hadn't even shown himself yet. Caleb's breath came ragged. He knew this couldn't last. But if this was the end, he'd make damn sure Mira didn't fall back into their hands. The cloth revealed. A bandit lunged forward, pistol raised, aiming at Mira. Caleb threw himself across the cave, tackling her down. The shot cracked, the bullet carving stone where her head had been. In the struggle, his hand caught on the edge of her cloth. It tore. The ragged fabric fell away. Caleb froze. Beneath it, Myra's body was a canvas of scars, deep, ugly welts carved by whips, burns along her shoulders, and across her chest a brand seared into the flesh, a crude mark of ownership. Below it, inked in black, the name of the gang's leader scrawled like a signature. Property. Myra's hands scrambled to cover herself, her face crumpling. Tears streaked her dirt-stained cheeks as she whispered, "No, please don't look." Caleb's rifle slipped in his hands. His breath shuddered. His fingers trembled, not from fear, not from disgust, but from rage, from sorrow so sharp it cut bone. Now he understood why she begged, why she hid, why death seemed a kinder fate than being seen. He knelt beside her, his blood dripping into the dirt, and forced her chin up with a hand that shook. "This ain't your shame," he rasped, voice breaking. "It's theirs. Every mark. Theirs. Not yours." Mira sobbed, her body collapsing into his arms, clinging to him as if the weight of her past might drown her. For a moment, the gunfire outside was distant. For a moment, it was only grief and fury, and the fragile bond between a broken girl and a man who'd lost everything but his will to protect. Then another bullet ricocheted, snapping them back to the fight. The final showdown. The cave mouth darkened. A massive figure stepped in, his coat stitched with wolf pelts, a cruel grin splitting his scarred face. The leader. "Well, well," he drawled, eyes locking on Mira. "Took you long enough to come home, girl." Mira shrank back, shaking her head. Caleb pushed to his feet, rifle raised despite the blood soaking his shirt. "She ain't yours," he growled. The leader laughed. "She's mine, body and soul. Marked her myself. You think you can stand between me and what's mine, old man?" Caleb's vision blurred, but fire burned in his chest. "I buried a wife. I buried a daughter. You'll be the next grave I dig." The bandit leader charged. Gunfire thundered, rifles cracking, sparks flying in the cave. Caleb's bullet slammed into the man's shoulder, but he kept coming, tackling Caleb hard into the stone. The rifle clattered away. They grappled, fists and fury, blood smearing rock. The leader's knife slashed, grazing Caleb's throat. Caleb struck back with raw desperation, but his strength ebbed with every heartbeat. Then Tala moved, silent as the wind, driving his blade deep into the leader's side. The man howled, staggering. Caleb seized the moment, grabbing his fallen rifle and firing point blank. The shot echoed like thunder. The leader fell, eyes wide, blood blooming dark. Caleb collapsed, gasping, vision swimming. Tala's hand gripped his shoulder, steadying him. The battle was over. Resolution. Silence blanketed the cave. Only the crackle of the dying fire and the faint drip of melting snow remained. Outside, the wind eased. Snow fell in soft sheets, covering the bodies that littered the pass. The land swallowed violence like it always did, leaving only scars behind. Mira sat trembling, the torn cloth at her feet. Caleb pulled his own blanket from his pack and draped it over her shoulders. She clutched it tightly, not as a prison, but as something new. A beginning. Caleb met her eyes. For the first time, she didn't look away. He realized then that purpose hadn't died with his family. It lived in the act of standing for someone who couldn't stand alone. He couldn't replace what he'd lost, but he could protect what remained. Together, with Tala leading the way, they stepped into the snow-swept dawn. Broken, scarred, but not defeated. In a land where scars run deeper than wounds, courage is not in hiding what you carry, but in finding someone who will stand beside you when the world tries to break you. Caleb Harlow found more than a stranger in the storm. He found a reason to fight again. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of the untamed frontier, where every soul carries scars and every choice can change everything.